It was a special holiday on the island of Sodor. Bertie the bus was working harder than ever before. All the engines were busy too. Trevor, the traction engine, was enjoying his work in the vicarage orchard. Birds were singing and apples were ripening on the trees. It was a lovely day. "Hello, Trevor," said James. "You look as bright and cheerful as my red paint." "Oh, I am," replied Trevor. "What's that noise?" asked James. "It's the bees," laughed Trevor. "They're all in these boxy things called beehives. I'm taking them to the station. The vicar says his bees make good honey and is giving some of them to his friends." Just then, Boko, the diesel engine, hummed in. "Take care, you two. Don't make the bees angry. They might sting you." James didn't like being told what to do by a diesel, and he buzzed away. "Goodbye, Trevor," called Boko, and set off to see Duck at the next station. Bill and Ben, the tank engine twins, were busy arranging trucks, but they scampered off when they saw Boko. "I remember the first time I met those two," laughed Boko. "They nearly made my eyes pop out. Edward soon put a stop to their games." "Edward is the only one who can keep Bill and Ben in order," chuckled Duck. "I sometimes call them the Bees." "A good name," replied Boko. "They're terrors when they start buzzing around." James bustled in. "What's that, Duck?" he snorted. "Are you afraid of bees? They're only insects after all, so don't let that buzzbox diesel tell you different." "His name is Boko, and he didn't "I wouldn't care," interrupted James. "If hundreds were swarming around, I'd just blow smoke and make them buzz off." "Buzz, buzz, buzz," retorted Duck. Duck was waiting for his next journey. Near him stood a red bus, but he didn't look friendly like Bertie. The bus growled as he gazed at the happy passengers. "Stupid nonsense," he grumbled. "I wouldn't have brought them if I'd known. I'd have had a breakdown or something." "I'm glad you didn't," smiled Duck. "You'd have spoiled their fun." "Ah, enjoyment is all you engines live for. One day railways will be ripped up." Duck felt shocked at such an idea. "We have a friend called Bertie, and he's a bus, but he likes the railway. Sometimes he teases us about it, but he'd never want to see it ripped up." "Huh," growled the bus. "I know Bertie. He's too small in size to be of any use." Duck took no notice. "That bus is silly," he thought as he steamed away. At the junction, Duck told Oliver all about him. "I call him Bulgy," chuckled Oliver. Then he puffed happily away. But that afternoon, when the two engines met again, Oliver was no longer laughing. "Bulgy's friend has come," he said. "He's rude too. He's taking Bulgy's passengers home so as to leave Bulgy free to steal ours." "But he can't," objected Doug. "Bulgy says he can get them to the big station before us." "Rubbish," replied Doug. "It's much further by road." "Yes," continued Oliver, "but Bulgy says he knows a shortcut." The next morning, James arrived at the station to collect his coaches. The passengers were excited and keen to get on board. The platform was crowded and the porter was in a hurry. "Mind your backs," he shouted. Then there was trouble. The beehive fell and broke open. The station cleared like magic. James heard a familiar buzzing. The bees were too cold to be cross, so they buzzed around the fireman hoping he'd mend their hive, but he didn't understand, nor did his driver. So the bees turned to James. His boiler was nice and warm. Buzz off, hissed James. One bee burnt his foot. Ooh, ah, phew, phew. The bee thought James had burnt him on purpose. so it stung James right back on the nose. "Eee!" whistled James. He had had enough. So had his fireman and driver. They didn't notice till too late that they had left all their coaches behind. That evening, the engines were preparing for the homeward rush. Where are the passengers? They wondered. "Look!" shrilled Oliver. "Look at Bulgy! He's a mean scarlet deceiver!" Bulgy was wearing a large sign saying Railway Bus. "Yaboo snubs!" he jeered as he roared away. "Come on!" puffed Duck to his coaches. "Let's see what he's up to." They tried everything to get rid of the bees. First, they spun on the turntable, to no avail. They tried washing them off, but the bees clung harder to James's warm boiler. Then they tried smoking them off by going through a long tunnel. But still the bees wouldn't go away. "It's no good, James," said his driver. "We'll just have to go back to the orchard and fetch another hive." James's reply was drowned by the sound of buzzing. Duck wanted to pay Bulgy out, but he wasn't sure how. Then, in the distance, Duck saw a man waving a red flag. That meant danger. The line here crosses a narrow road, and there was Bulgy, wedged firmly under the bridge. "So this was his shortcut," chuckled Duck. "He tricked us," shouted Bulgy's passengers. "He said he was a railway bus, but he wouldn't accept our return tickets. He wanted us to think railways are no good." Duck's crew examined the bridge. "It's risky, but we must help the passengers." "Passengers are urgent," agreed Duck. Duck slowly and carefully set off across the bridge. Bulgy wailed as he felt the bridge quiver. "Stop!" he shouted. "It might fall on me." "That would serve you right for telling lies," said Duck. But the bridge didn't collapse. The vicar was waiting anxiously for James. When he arrived, the bees swarmed straight into their new home. "Come on, James," said his driver. "What you need now is a good hose down." Duck made good time, and all the passengers caught their trains. Later that evening, James was resting in the shed when the vicar came to see him. "Thank you for saving my bees," he said. "It's a pity it's not Christmas, then we could call you James the Red-Nosed Engine." Everyone laughed, even James, but instead they decided to call James the Bee's Knees, which means they thought he was more useful than ever. The bridge is now mended, but not, unfortunately, Bulgy and his ways. He never learned sense. He's a hen house now, and his lies can do no harm. The hens never listen to them anyway.